Interesting question being posed right now, Holly. Are high-profile inmates, prison inmates, jail inmates, given special treatment, or is it simply a necessary caution? And we've come to understand this, or at least appreciate what's going on, because of the arrest and detention of Tyler Robinson, the alleged murderer of political influencer Charlie Kirk. He's being held right now in the Utah County Jail. His attorneys have filed some motions that we'll talk about. But do the authorities there house him different than they would the general population? And that's sort of the question that we're looking at here.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because we see some of that. So specific to Tyler Robinson, I know that when I was out of the country, I still have to follow the news. So that's how much of a junkie I am.
Right.
A nerd, I guess. But I saw that he was requesting through his attorneys that he appear in street clothes and without shackles. And of course, you're the expert. And so I know that you talked about that previously, but I'm wondering if you can educate me. Like, why would he do that?
Yeah. So when a person's in custody and they appear before a jury at their trial, you would always expect them to be wearing street clothes so that the jury doesn't have to say, well, they're in jail, so they must be guilty of something. That's for the trial. That's in front of the jury. We also do one other thing, and that is that we hide their shackles, or maybe we don't shackle them. Maybe there's a bailiff that sits in the courtroom. But oftentimes I've seen individuals that I've represented who are shackled under their ankles, and they'll sit at a table where the court will actually put an apron on the front of the table so you can't see their feet. And they don't walk into the courtroom, hobbling in with their cuffs. They walk in and they're sitting before the jury walks in, so the jury never sees them in jail clothes and never sees them shackled. And that's for their the whole idea of the presumption of innocence is so important to what we do in America that we don't want jurors to be tainted by seeing someone in jail clothes or with shackles. What's different about Tyler Robinson, and the attorneys did the same thing with the Corey Richins case up in Summit County, they were able to convince the judge up there that every time she has court, she can wear civilian clothes and she can come in with no cuffs. She sits by counsel and she looks as though she came in off the street. And they want to do the same thing with Tyler Robinson. The judge hasn't necessarily ruled on that yet, but he's given both sides more time to what he's called, give us over length briefs on that. Not that it would take a long time, but he's saying, yeah, file whatever you want. Usually you have like some rule that your brief has to have 7 pages or 10 pages. He's saying file as much as you want. So he'll hear that as well. I haven't got to my point yet, which is this. When you're appearing before you get to the jury and you're just appearing before the judge, it's of less consequence to the defense because the judge knows you're in jail and the judge isn't making decisions based on that anyway. The difference, though, with Tyler Robinson is that because his hearings are all going to be televised, just like Corey Richins, there's such a media controversy or frenzy over it that the public seeing them in their jail clothes and the defense attorneys don't want to see that. So I understand that. And I appreciate that. It's just something that's a little bit unusual. We don't usually see that.
So is it special treatment then?
Yeah, I mean, sure. The defense is asking for special treatment, and they're saying that because of the high profile nature of this, because of the fact that there are all the people in Utah County who could potentially be on the jury and who are watching the news perhaps and watching this proceeding, should they see him in jail clothes before they see him during their jury trial? And the defense is saying no, that taints him, and he's not likely to get a fair trial if people see that.
So what other kinds of treatment? I don't even know if it's special treatment, but what other kinds of different treatment would high-profile prisoners have? Like, are they kept in isolation? Are they, like what kinds of things would you expect with something with so high profile? But we also have, I know down in Utah County, we also have the person who allegedly drove the semi-truck into the police officer, that he's down there as well. Yeah. Are there...
The Jane case, right. Yeah. So if you're a county sheriff, or let's say you're the state warden, and you're housing inmates, you are responsible legally for their well-being. Yeah. And if somebody's having a heart attack, you got to get them to a doctor. If somebody's got some other condition, you've got to get them to get the right care. But if their life is at danger from other inmates, or they are a danger to other inmates, you've got to protect the other inmates. I know that people don't like that necessarily. Well, if you're in prison, you deserve what you get, but that's not the case. So our jailers and our prison authorities have to protect the inmates from others and vice versa. Meaning this, Tyler Robinson, because of the high-profile nature of the case, I mean, maybe there are inmates at the jail who feel strongly that Charlie Kirk was one of their heroes, or they may feel like it would be a badge of honor for them if they did something to Tyler Robinson, if they hurt him.
Right.
So he will almost certainly, and probably has at this point in time, been housed in what people might call solitary confinement. In other words, he's in his own cell. Now, I was looking at the article about this. They said, well, solitary confinement isn't what you see on Shawshank Redemption, all that stuff.
That's good to know.
I disagree a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, solitary is solitary. And I just think that if you look at our death row inmates who they don't mingle much. And so 30, 40 years of solitary, it starts messing with your head. I don't care who you are and what you've done. I mean, that kind of thing is tough. On the other hand, if an inmate is threatened, or the prison or jail knows that there's a threat, and they get put back in general population and they get stabbed or hurt, then you're on the hook as a jailer. Like, hey, you knew this guy was at risk and you didn't do anything about it.
You know, it also makes me think of high-profile cases. Jeffrey Epstein, of course.
Right.
But also Ghislaine Maxwell, who was moved to a minimum security prison. And I understand what you're saying about not biasing the jury. I understand what you're saying about for their protection and for the protection of people around them. But it sounds to me like some of the articles I'm seeing about Ghislaine, who has been transferred to this minimum security prison, that she's actually getting special privileges, meaning like what normal quote unquote prisoners would not receive. Like they're shutting down the jail so that she can receive quote unquote special visitors.
Yeah, I mean, and that there's a political end to that, and we don't know exactly what's going on, but she is certainly being wooed by different people for her testimony or to give information, and it may be of some value to certain political people to have that information. And so one way to get that from her, I mean, if you say, hey, Ghislaine, you're going to serve the next 30 years in prison, can you help us with this? She's going to say no. But if you say, hey, you're going to serve the next 30 years in prison, we might be able to knock that down to 10 if you'll help us, then she might say yes. So that's the quid pro quo, and that's something that's clearly happening now, or almost certainly, if she's being housed in a little more cushy facility with less restriction and that type of thing, because there's some hook at the end of it.
Right. You know, I remember, and I didn't follow this closely when it happened, but I remember Martha Stewart when she got sent to prison as well, and I think I remember hearing that it was almost like a spa. Is that even possible?
No, it's not at all. I mean, there are federal prisons that they call camps because they are more sort of, hanging out and going with the guys and moving around to different areas. And she may have been placed in a camp. That just means it's a low security prison. That doesn't mean anything. She's still not going anywhere during the day, but she might be working, or some of them actually go out in the community and work during the day. I doubt she would because of her notoriety. Yeah. But you remember just some cases that I worked on personally involved, Wanda Barzee and Brian David Mitchell, the kidnappers of Elizabeth Smart. They were housed, at least Brian Mitchell was, in a separate facility because he was his own worst enemy, and he was always causing problems with the other inmates, and so they had to house him separately for his own safety. I prosecuted the Altiview Hospital case. It may have been before you got here. And that
No, I remember that because I was a labor and delivery nurse when it happened.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So I was the prosecutor on that case. And the prison had to house him at another prison. I mean, they moved him to, I think it was New Mexico. They did a prisoner exchange, because he was causing so much problems and he was having so many threats that they just literally moved him out of Utah. And I guess New Mexico sent us one of their cherubs, with the they just were like, hey, we need to get him for his own safety. Right. They had to get him moved to another facility, and he ended up killing himself there anyway. So, I mean, but yeah, sometimes prison.
Sometimes special treatment is not special in a good way.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and it's it's really these poor jailers, they've got to be frantically trying to protect people and making sure that they don't get in trouble.
Yep.